Welcome to the Labyrinth. I am your host, Pratham Padav. My guest today is Ritika Temkar. She's the co-founder of Organic Garden, which is an online store that sells organic food products in Mumbai. Apart from being an entrepreneur, she is also a seeker of truth and a very eloquent poet. Ritika, welcome to the Labyrinth.
Thank you so much. That was such a sweet introduction. Thank you. Very excited to be on here.
So, how are you? How are things in Mumbai?
Things are good. Are you not in Mumbai?
No, I'm from Mangalore actually. I'm not from Mumbai.
Oh, you're in Bangalore. Oh, I had no
Yes.
idea. Things are, I mean, you know how it is. Places are getting shut at 10 because post 10 COVID is just everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah. COVID has its own office hours.
Yeah, exactly. COVID likes to party, so everyone else has to go.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of COVID, I think one important thing that we've all learned in the past year is that nutrition is very important because more than COVID, I think the big issue is really obesity and diabetes. And the one wonderful thing that you're doing is with Organic Garden, you're selling good food products. So tell me, when did you start with the Organic Garden?
So it's actually quite interesting. My parents actually started the company a decade ago before organic food was a thing at all in India. So they were sort of like among the trailblazers in the movement. And the reason that they did it is so we don't come from a food background at all. My parents actually had a fashion business, have a fashion business that I was working in as well. But the reason that they started this is that they wanted to give back to the country in a tangible manner. So it was more like a social enterprise than anything else. It was never really meant to become like a full-fledged business. They just did it because they thought that, you know, the farmer suicides was a big problem in India, and they wanted to tap into the reason of it and do some work at the grassroots level. And what they realized through their research while doing this was that the lands of all of these farmers had become completely barren, if not like, yeah, either inefficient or completely barren, which is why they weren't able to grow any produce on it. And it was like, it was very sporadic. The way the seasons were very sporadic, the way that the vegetables were growing was very irregular. And the reason for that was because the soil was extremely depleted of nutrients, so much so that it wasn't able to generate, you know, any produce at all. So they basically worked with the farmers and worked with different people in the organic industry, in the knowledge aspect of the industry, to come in and teach the farmers about how to regenerate their lands and how to bring nourishment back to the earth and back to the soil, basically. So the process for that was to not grow anything on the land for about 3 years and to make sure that the soil was like new, sort of like birth soil again. And that's what they worked on, and that's why they started it. And I only recently joined. So in the beginning of 2021, I was working in the fashion business, but it just started feeling very um, how should I say? I don't know. It just wasn't giving me any purpose to be in that business. And it was just making me feel like, is this really my calling? I'm not so sure. I enjoy fashion and I like, you know, every aspect of the clothing and the all of the design that goes into it. I love it. But it just wasn't making me happy to be in that industry because I know all of the problems with it. And intrinsically, when you realize everything that's going wrong, unless you're actively making change, at least for someone like me, I started feeling a lot of like guilt and a lot of helplessness. And I decided, you know what, I just want to do something that will actually make some real change and that will really help me feel like I'm doing something good for the earth. And obviously, organic food was just a very obvious shift. So yeah, so that's how I started. And I love it. I love every moment of it. I think I truly believe, and so do my parents, it's not just because we're certified that we want to sell organic. It's because all of our hearts are really in the business, and we truly, truly believe that the only way forward is, you know, these like small organic businesses that really are farmer orientated, and where we look after the farmers, and in turn they look after the planet and the people. So yeah, it's the idea is to be very holistic and wholesome, and it's so up my alley. I love it.
How was your experience in fashion industry? Did you find it too superficial?
So yeah, it's honestly, it is. I met some wonderful people, to be fair. There are some really nice people as well. But it's just very, more than it being superficial, it's very cutthroat in a sense that everyone's constantly trying to squeeze you to get the better deal. And I'm not the kind of person that likes to bargain at all. So when someone is bargaining with me so much, I'm just like, thank you, sorry, bye bye. It's not my favorite thing. And I did it for like about like 5 years before shifting focus. And I don't know, it just felt like something was very wrong in the way that the industry was being operated. And I actually am looking to go like return to the industry in my own way, but I plan on disrupting it ethically and environmentally, because now that I know all the issues, I feel like I have the tools to really work on it in my own fashion.
That's wonderful. What is the purpose of organic garden? What are your future goals with the organic garden?
Our future goals are basically just to educate as many people as possible about what organic food truly is, and to bring this like golden age of health into India, into the world, and to really make people realize that your health is everything. You may earn all the money on the planet, but if you don't have your health, you have nothing. And that is exactly what this situation has taught us. I believe that this is the silver lining of this COVID situation, is that people are realizing that they can outwardly project and blame each other, vaxxed, unvaxxed, all of this stuff. But everyone is innately realizing that if they don't make an intrinsic change in their own development, um, we're not going anywhere, and we're trapped in this sort of situation. So yeah, that's the goal, is just to like hold everyone's hand and just be like, let's move into this like let's take on this global shift together.
Yes, the same guy who is selling these injections is also selling GMOs, which is a threat again to the organic industry. Do you think we can do something to tackle these kinds of threats?
So basically, so so basically, the big problem of the green revolution as well was the influx of GMOs, genetically modified seeds. So historically, what our farmers used to do is they used to have indigenous seeds, which then they would harvest. They would like, and then after their harvest, they would use the new seeds to grow their plants again. But that's the problem with the GMO seeds, is that you cannot use them multiple times. So they only work per harvest, which is really, it's just so unnatural if you think about it, because the point of all nature, like biologically, is to regenerate. So the fact that this seed cannot regenerate means that there is a big problem with the seed in the first place. So every cycle, the farmer needs to go back and buy a new set of seeds, and then cultivate those seeds. So obviously that itself is a very flawed system, because it's not sustainable. It's clearly very, very far from regenerative. It's a very destructive practice. So I feel like a lot of farmers are actually waking up to the understanding that there's something very wrong about this. And when you meet the farmers, you realize that they actually love their land. They love the earth. They love the soil. They love this country. And they're really there to feed us all. So I feel like the least that we can do is change the way that we consume, so that we're able to give them that opportunity to really be the best that they can. And there's definitely a movement towards it, is what I've noticed.
Um, during these times, during the past year, we talk. There has been words like morality and responsibility. These people who are not cooperating with society, the unvaccinated, they are irresponsible. I sometimes, because we're talking about organic food, I sometimes think that people who willingly eat terrible food, okay, junk food, despite knowing that it's bad for them. And people who lead a bad lifestyle, I sometimes think that they don't have the right to complain if they fall
Yeah.
sick, right? And they do it intentionally, and then they try to blame it on others. Do you think there is an absence of self responsibility today?
Absolutely. And this is one topic that I always harp on about. I believe that we are truly in the age of radical responsibility. You need to be responsible for your thoughts, for your energy, for your actions, for what you put into your body, for what you put out into the universe, for every single thing. Because unless you're making these changes on a very intrinsic level, you may be causing more destruction than you know, not just to yourself, but to everything and everyone around you. And all of these people that believe that the people that are opposing the system or that are opposing the way things are traditionally being done today are the problem, are actually very unaware of the message that these people have. I mean, these people is me, us. So the message is basically that we don't want to comply because we want to comply with our own soul, our health, our body, our mind, and our requirements. And all of these in conjunction intuitively are telling us that the only way to overcome the situation is to look after yourself. And the way to do that is to change the way you eat, is to change the way you exercise, change the way you live, is to really cultivate this holistic lifestyle and not depend on like buying health from a pharmaceutical company. Like it's so wild to me that we even need to have this discussion, because I feel like it's just such a basic understanding that every human being sort of innately has, but just loses over time because of, all of the conditioning and programming that we undergo.
Yeah, speaking of conditioning, I know that we think differently compared to the majority. Have you lost any friends because of the way you think?
Good question. So I personally, so basically the way that I look at the situation, and it's changed over time. I feel like I have evolved as well a lot in the past 2 years, where initially when I was finding out things, the way that I approached the situation was like, oh my God, I need to tell everyone everything. You need to alert everyone, like, oh my God, we need to save the world. That's how it was. But I feel like, and during that time, I had quite a few spats with people. But I feel like post, recently, I my approach towards it has become more gentle as well. So I'll be very clear about my convictions to everyone that I meet. I don't have a problem with that. But for example, I don't feel like I need to discuss everything with everyone anymore. I feel like, everyone is really on their own journey, and their life will be their life and your life will be your life. So you can bring to it, you can add value to it in whatever way you feel. But I feel like, losing friends over things like this is exactly what they want, exactly what the system wants. It wants to divide you, and it wants to make you polarized, and it wants to isolate you from your friends and family so that people like you and me feel like, oh my God, is something truly wrong with us? When that is not the situation that I want to create for myself. So I'm very, very clear with everyone about what I feel. And I tell people very clearly if I find something ridiculous, because I do. And that is just the way it is. And I have, I won't lie, I have been, some quite strange things have been said to me over these past couple of years by very close friends and people that I truly love as well. And I don't take it to heart anymore, because I just think that, if they can't understand, they can't understand. It just is what it is.
But is it hurtful, or do you feel like, okay, these are toxic people, they are trying to intentionally say things without understanding what I'm trying to say? Should I distance myself from them? Have you ever felt like you should distance yourself from people who are basically sheeple, who are succumbing into herd mentality?
So I feel like, for me, it's not so much a conscious decision as it's just an energetic thing that happens. Like if I get into some kind of spat with someone, I won't make a conscious decision to be like, I am going to like excavate this person from my life. It's not like that. For me, I'm just very prone to energy in general. Like I'm very sensitive to it. So if someone is really mean to me, or if someone, just takes on what I'm saying, or, is misunderstanding me to a point where I believe that we're just not vibrating on a frequency where we can understand each other, that automatically starts happening by itself. And it takes its course. It's not something that I ever do on purpose, but I feel like it just happens. And I used to be in this sort of like blame mentality more before, where I was like, this behavior is toxic or this is not all right. But now I feel a lot of empathy now. Sorry, I don't know. Yeah. I feel more empathy than anger or dismay, because I feel like it's really unfortunate that people are so programmed and so conditioned that they're willing to fight their best friends, their family, their loved ones for just to be an agent for the government. Like who cares about the government? Like who are they? And why the hell should we be fighting with each other for them? It's just the most ridiculous thing to me. And so I just feel a lot of like, I just hold space for them, to be honest. And I feel like that's the best that I can do. And whatever's to happen energetically will end up happening anyway. I don't pay a lot of attention to it.
Were you always like this, or was there a time where when you were conditioned?
Oh, definitely. Oh my God. I feel like I was so conditioned. No, I mean, so ever since I was a child, I always wondered. I feel like one of the first very clear memory I have is when I was in a car with my mom, and I was just looking onto the street and I was watching these little children that were just playing on the street. And I looked at her and I was like, why is it that, they have this life and we have this life? Isn't life unfair? And she said, honestly, they could have been born where we are and we could have been born where they are. And that is just how life is. So just never take it for granted. And I remember her telling me this. And then I thought about it a lot. And I was really young. So obviously my thoughts weren't very articulate. But I thought about it a lot. And even at that time, I thought that there's something very wrong with the world. Like places like India and Africa, why do we lead these like destitute lives below the poverty line where so many people are suffering, whereas in the West, historically, their lives have been so cushy in comparison. So although I didn't really understand the history of the world at that time, I knew that something must have gone wrong at some point in the world, in global history, for this sort of situation to arise. So that intrinsic understanding was there ever since I was young. But I was obviously subject to all the possible conditioning that could exist. There was a point where I was a massive atheist as well. I used to listen to a lot of metal, and I used to just be like, like
Yeah, we've
Anarchy.
all been there.
But yeah, I was just like, oh, there's no God. And like, what is this God? Only if I see something, I'll believe it. And, now if I retrospectively, when I think about it, I feel like, when they say that rock is, like metal or like heavy metal is satanic, is Satan's music. And when I was younger, I used to be like, what is it? Satan is cool, like, what do you mean it's Satan's music and all? But now that I'm older, I feel like I try to make that connection between why at the time when I was listening to this music the most, was I the most atheist? That means there must be some connection that I'm not understanding on a very like a vibrational level, because sound is vibration at the end of the day. So either that depletes your vibration or increases it. So I know that there's definitely some connection. And yeah, for a long time in my life, I was very, what do you call? I was very atheist. I was against everything. So I was always against organized religion, because I knew that there was something very wrong with the way that people were indoctrinated against each other and, divided in terms of religion. And that's why I just decided that I hate all religion. But now, obviously, after growing up, I've become far more nuanced, or I'd like to believe I've become far more nuanced, where I can say that, there are very good aspects of many of these teachings that we can imbibe happily without having to adhere to any one of them and being like, this is who I am forever and ever, without, without any question. So I do feel like it's been a massive journey. It's been a massive awakening. There were so many things that I had to deliberately condition myself out of. As a woman, I think the body is constantly attacked. Your body, and I talk about this a lot in my poetry as well, that your body is attacked, the way that you look is attacked. You're constantly being told how you should think, how you should feel, how you should behave, how you should dress. And I always rebelled against it. So I was like, oh, I'll wear shorts because I want to rebel. Like that was the thought behind it. But now the thought is not I'll wear shorts because I want to rebel. Now it's more um I feel like it's more about understanding culture, understanding why is it that some people are not open to these things? What is the conditioning that they have received over time? Why is it that they, cannot approach a situation with the kind of radical open-mindedness that we can? It's clearly because the exposure that they have been given compared to the exposure that we have been given is very, very different. So I try to be much more understanding about everything that's happening around me, and just open my heart to different kinds of people so that I'm much more sensitive rather than just being like, screw this, I don't like it, I won't do it.
And I don't think metal is the devil's music. I think those who say metal is the devil's music should listen to Lil Nas X. Um, right? And I'm glad that you brought atheism, because I think even I was an atheist in my teenage and in my early 20s. Now I think I'm more of an agnostic. I don't know what I am, honestly. Uh, but what my experience with other atheists is that even atheists behave in a very religious way. That is, even they get angry when you say something against their opinions. Even they treat Fauci like a godman. Okay, so how is that any different from a person who follows an organized religion? Okay, and even sometimes when atheists say that all terrorists are religious people, I'm like, have you heard of Naxalites? So, and these people today are not interested in um, acquiring or seeking truth. They are more interested in preserving their narratives. They don't. There are two kinds of thinker. There's two kinds of thinking, is what I think. There are research-based thinkers and conclusion-based thinkers. Research-based thinkers do the research first, and they may or may not reach a conclusion. And then there are conclusion-based thinkers who conclude first, and then they only do the research that agrees with their preconceived conclusion. And a lot of the atheists that I talk to, they are so obsessed with preserving their narrative that any opinion that goes against their narrative, they just shun it. It's like a religious person saying, "Oh, you disagree with me, I'm going to issue a fatwa against you." It's the same thing. So, anyways, so do you
That's
ever?
actually a really keen observation. I love how you've assessed that situation. I think that's so right, because I feel like the whole idea of atheism, at least when it came about, was to just be like, okay, there isn't a god. Okay, there isn't a god, and this is what we believe. But I feel like the you know and maybe I'm completely wrong about this, but what I believe, like from my understanding of the human psyche, I believe that we are intrinsically connected to something. We have source energy in us, so we do have this feeling of um you know how do I put it? We have this feeling of like a devout understanding of something bigger than us. And I feel like because every human being has it on some level, atheists also have it. But because they've rejected God, they've, accepted many other figures as a replacement to that God. So whether it's believing in celebrities, whether it's believing in Fauci, like you mentioned, whether it's believing in science, they have created many different gods for themselves under the rules of logic. But that's not logic. That is still you creating this god situation and giving this title to people that absolutely don't deserve it.
Yeah, you nailed it. Um, Speaking of what's happening right now, is life worth living without freedoms and rights?
Good question. Really good question. Um, Honestly, the way that I think about freedom is that I don't believe that before this situation we were free. I truly don't. I don't believe that the lives that we lived before this is a free life. We are still paying taxes, and what is taxation? It's a pyramid scheme at the end of the day. So we are still slaves to the system. We have never been emancipated of the slavery, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, whether it's financial. It's always existed. We can't even, we're not empowered to grow our own food. We're not empowered to teach ourselves anything. Like, we learn everything either from the internet or we learn it from an institution. That's it. So truly, we were never free. This is just made us understand what our shackles were. For the first time, we're looking at ourselves and we're like, shit, we're in handcuffs. And then you break out of these handcuffs and you realize, you're like, oh my God, I've broken out of the handcuffs. So you look around and you're like, shit, but I'm in a cage. So I feel like the only way to truly have real freedom is creating these communities for ourselves, like emancipating ourselves from the system and creating these amazing, wholesome, holistic communities where we go back to exchanging information with each other, with having conversations with each other, with, facilitating debate, discourse, with like bringing a whole group of people together, bringing all of our talents. Okay, we've acquired talents now from the system. Say, I've studied something, you studied something else, whatever. Come together and create our own livelihood so that we are truly free in the true sense of freedom. Like, which is why when I feel like, oh, this 10 o'clock thing sucks and I'm so fried with it and all, whatever. And before that, I used to feel the 1 o'clock thing sucks. I used to be like, why do places have to close at 1:30? Like, why? Why is that a rule as well? Why can't places be on? So I don't think I've ever felt free, because after assessing what freedom is to me, the fact is that I've never been free. I don't feel like any of us have.
That's a good way to put it. So then my next question has to be, what is your political worldview? Are you an anarchist? Because you just said taxation is theft, so I have to go in that route now.
So I used to think for the longest time, I've always been very liberal. I've grown up with a very liberal family, liberal perspective. But then in the past 4 years, what liberalism became started scaring me. And I was like, I'm not that for sure. Like, I don't adhere to any of these insane opinions that are, in the mainstream at all. So then I started questioning, what am I truly? Then I was like, okay, fine. I do actually adhere to a lot of conservative values as well, in terms of the economy, in terms of, conservatives are more, capitalist in nature. I'm not a socialist myself. So I do believe that I don't think that capitalism is the be all and end all of everything, but I do believe historically it's the only system of economy that's worked. So a lot of the times I sort of volley between one side and the other. So I feel like more and more I'm realizing I'm sort of a centrist, but then I also know that I hate government only. Like, I just hate the concept of government. And this is one thing that I posted today as well. The etymology of the word government. So the word gubernare, which means to control, which is like a Latin verb. And the other word is mens, which means the mind. So, I mean, I don't want any of this mind control. So truly, in the real sense of the word, I am an anarchist. And today, it was really funny that you're asking me this, because I was having a conversation with my parents earlier about, this like vaccine passports and all. And my parents were like, we don't want to argue with you, just forget it. So I said, okay, fine. And I just turned around and I just got up to go away. And then I turned around and I was like, anarchy. Just
I think in this part of the podcast we are bringing out our inner Johan Tengra in us. I think he would be very proud of this.
He really would. But I feel like, for the longest time, anarchists have also gotten a very bad rep, because the way that they fight the system is a lot of the times is through violence, which I don't believe is always necessary. I do believe that there's a time for everything. And so I always say that there are these two archetypes in the world, the Gandhi and the Bhagat Singh. And there is a time for both. There's a time to be a Gandhi, and then there's a time to be a Bhagat Singh. You just have to know when is the time to do what. So I feel like because historically we've only had the Bhagat Singhs as the anarchists, people don't understand that the anarchists can also be the Gandhi. So yeah, man, anarchy.
Yeah, anarchy can be done through non-violence as well, because one of
Absolutely.
Gandhi's idol was Leo Tolstoy, who
Mm,
promoted non-violence, and he was also an anarchist. So
mm.
people saying that anarchy is about chaos, no, anarchy is not chaotic. Anarchy is actually the mother of control. It actually promotes safety, it promotes human rights. So I don't think anarchy is about chaos and violence at all.
No, it's
So
not. But you know what it is, right? Anything that's intrinsically good or anything that people are likely to adhere to, the system always finds a way to malign it. And that's what I believe has happened. Like they've stereotyped anarchy and anarchists to be a certain way so that everyone looks and they're like, oh my God, like bad person, anarchist, all of this, when that's clearly not what it is. It's never what they tell you it is. Yeah, it's same old stuff.
yeah, I also want to talk a little bit about culture and gender, because I know you post about that as well. What do you think is the role of a modern woman, and where do you think femininity can help us today?
So basically, I feel like I'm a mix of tradition and conventionality, in the sense that I do believe that traditionally that women have a certain role because we are biologically wired to be a certain way. So we may think that we want to have this like masculine energy, and that's what we want to be, and we want to like run the system and run the world as the men do. And I'm sure that there are women that fit into that archetype. But I believe that the majority of women that I've ever come across in my life are loving, caring, compassionate, empathetic, and just have such incredible divinity in their femininity. And I really feel bad that the world and culture is pushing us to lose that or forget that in order to be empowered, because I don't believe that that is empowerment. I don't believe that extracting yourself from your true spiritual biological nature is empowerment in any way. Empowerment is actually reaching back into your own body, into your mind, into your intuition, and being like, who am I truly? And what is it that I can bring to this planet in this physical shape, form, um, like in this way that I'm here. And as a woman, I believe that that's so much. If women were in office, and the kind of women who are truly empowered, who truly believe in their femininity, were in office and were in positions of power, I believe that the world would be run in a very different place. We'll probably have a lot of cold wars, but not really any not really
Mm.
any actual wars of like fighting. So I do believe that we're intrinsically quite like diplomatic and considerate, and that is what we bring to the table, and that is something that should be cherished. We are the nurturer of the family, and we are the nurturer of the planet, where the um the reason that we are the primary caregiver is because that's what we're full of. We're full of the care and compassion, and we have so much of it to give. So, in a time of so much duress, where there's so much polarity and so many people, there's so much hate out there, I truly believe that we can be the harbingers of love, because that is why we're here as women. That's our superpower.
That's very interesting. And what about masculinity? Do you think that masculinity is toxic?
Absolutely not. So I do believe that there is a lot of work being done to condition the masculine to be toxic, but I don't believe that masculinity is intrinsically toxic. And I feel like that is where the conversation about masculinity needs to change, where it's not toxic if men want to be men, and they want to have this sort of like bravado, and they want to have fun, and they want to have this male energy. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I have a father, I have two brothers who are predominantly like have this male energy. There's nothing wrong with that. But this whole thing about men should never cry, or men should never have even a moment of weakness that they can just like melt into. I feel like that conversation needs to be facilitated. Like it's all right for you to really feel what you need to feel. Feelings are not feminine. And so I had this. So the last person I dated basically cried once, and he was like, "Oh my God, I'm becoming like a girl. I'm feeling so many feelings." And I was like, "But feelings are like a human thing. No, there's nothing about feelings being a female thing. Feelings are human. Everyone needs to have them. Everyone needs to feel them, and everyone needs to accept and endure them in their own way in order to really process what's happening in the world. It's very important." Um, but yeah, I've never been of the opinion that masculinity is toxic. I think it's extremely necessary to have masculine men, and there is a war on masculinity today because the powers that be don't want any contest, and the men historically, spiritually, biologically are meant to fight. They are meant to take up arms in whatever way they can against tyranny. It's a very important thing for a society to have balance. And that's obviously the powers that we don't want that. They want weak men, because then there's no one to fight them.
And I also think it's about divide and rule: men versus women, straight versus gay, black versus white, left versus right. These are just ways to divide and control us. And there's so much more. Like, speaking of progressive politics, earlier when I was in school or when I was in college, they were saying, okay, you know what, we need to give equal opportunities for everyone, even for women. And I said, yeah, that's great. That's how it should be. But then they said, even we have to treat everyone equally. We have to even treat people who are homosexuals, gay people, as anyone else. And I said, okay, that's great, that's amazing. But then this whole acronym thing started: LGBTQIA plus, and now they're saying gender is fluid. Some I like progress, but sometimes when things are changing so rapidly, and when they don't even explain things to us properly, it's so confusing. It's like, when is this going to stop? Do you ever get confused with so much progress?
So basically, yeah, I'm very for equal opportunity. I'm very for the freedom of expression. I think it's a very important thing for people to be able to express themselves. But the problem with the system is that they make a good thing bad. The good thing was that gay people are getting their rights. Gay people are able to marry. It's very important that they're able to express themselves as any other human being would. It's very necessary. It's a part of being alive. So I'm very for that. But using this to push an agenda is what I don't agree with. Using progressiveness to push an agenda, and the agenda is that these, like, whatever, these gender pronouns now. So like in Canada, if you misgender someone, so if you look like a man and I say he, and I misgender you because you believe that you're not a man, then you can actually get me arrested or you can get me fined. And stuff like this is just bizarre to me. Like, you take a good thing and then you stretch it until it becomes a really crappy thing. And that's basically what they do with everything. That's what we discussed with the anarchy thing as well. They take anything that's intrinsically necessary for the progress of the planet, and then they malign it so much that people become against it. Then once it's okay because it's normal for people to become against it. Because if tomorrow you come and arrest me because I misgender someone based on their appearance, it's a ridiculous thing. I'm going to become like, it's going to create like a it's going to leave a bad taste for me for the entire situation and the entire movement, in a sense. And that's what they want. Then they can tell you things like, you are homophobic, you are transphobic, you are bigoted, you are, everything that there is, which is bad. When that's not a fact. People are not intrinsically homophobic, transphobic, bigoted. They are against the way that this movement is progressing, because it's progressing in a very scary manner. To be honest, it's taking away people's rights rather than allowing people to openly express themselves.
And I think the most important kind of diversity is diversity of opinion, and there's an attack on diversity of opinion, uh, which is again snatching away our freedom and rights. Speaking of freedom and rights, what is your opinion on I'm going to use the word. What is your opinion on the shit show that is happening right now, and what do you think is going to happen with our medical freedom and our bodily autonomy?
I honestly, I wish I knew the answer to that question, because I feel like I can draw up a thousand scenarios in my head, uh, because I just think that we are in a time of multiple realities. I am living a completely different life than my neighbor is, and our belief systems are completely different. The way that we perceive the world is completely different. And before, that used to not be, it wasn't as apparent as it is today, which is why I believe that there are a whole bunch of people, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, even people that are following mandates traditionally, or believe that there is something to follow, and the necessity of it. Even a lot of those people are like, we don't think that people's medical freedom should be taken away. We don't think that there should be a segregation based on your vaccination status. Obviously, we don't adhere to any of these, like, we don't adhere to the tyranny. But the problem is, as soon as you are coerced into doing something, and I didn't think of this myself, I actually read this somewhere where I was like, okay, fine. I was always of the opinion that, okay, everyone can do what they want. And if I believe that I don't want to be vaxxed, that should be allowed. And if someone believes that they want to be, that should be allowed. But now the problem occurs when, if the person that gets vaxxed because they have been coerced into it, because they need to travel, not because they believe that the vaccination is necessary for their health, but they only do it being coerced because they want to travel, which most people I know have done. That is still tying into the same scenario, because you are then agreeing to the coercion, which means you are agreeing to the mandate. So you may believe that you are of good heart and you don't believe in this mandate and you don't agree with the tyranny. But by accepting their rules and by being like this obedient citizen, you're still you're still actually accepting the tyranny, and you're a part of enforcing it, which is very, very unfortunate, and which is not what people are understanding at all right now.
Yeah, I like your way of thinking, and I look forward to meeting you in the concentration camp. Because that's where they're going to put us eventually. And I saw your I saw your recent post on self-love. Why do you think so many of us grow up hating ourselves?
Um, it's really, I feel like, life shouldn't be the kind of struggle it is. The system makes your life a struggle, which is very unfortunate, because I truly believe that beauty is the least important thing on the planet. Actually, like, the amount of consideration being given to beauty is just ridiculous right now. Like, it's all well to look nice and to feel good about yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy it myself. But I truly believe that the amount of importance that we give to a person's appearance is so ridiculous. We don't give that kind of importance to anything else. We don't give that kind of importance to intelligence. We don't give it to purity, goodness of heart, all, like, so many other values that are so much more important than good looks. Because you can look really good but be a complete asshole. And who does that serve? Are you really of service to society? No, you're not. You just look good. And I believe that society has, like, toyed with our brains so much that they've created this image of what it is to look good. And I feel like we're just so trapped in that physical paradigm that we don't see that life is so much more. It's so much beyond the physical paradigm. In fact, the physical is just such a small part of it. The metaphysical is actually where everything is, you know? So I truly believe that the reason that this importance is given to the physical appearance is to keep us trapped in this three-dimensional reality of everything just being about what we see and what we know, and just leading this very superficial existence. And innately as humans, we are not that, and we know it. There is some fractal, some particles, some matter within us that knows that this is not life and this is not it. It's a very intrinsic understanding that over time is conditioned out of us. But the people that still have it on even a minuscule level, there becomes a war within you, which is why you start hating yourself. You start hating that you adhere to these norms, but you can't help it because you live in a society where if you don't adhere to these norms, you're an outcast, you know? So I feel like the war begins within you. It's an extremely personal conflict that each one of us go through. And it's so massive for people. Like, it was very, very big for me as well. Um, and everyone's fighting this battle quietly within themselves all the time, every day. And it worries me, because I feel like once that battle comes out, like what is happening around us, because currently that is what is happening, we're projecting that outwards because we're so intrinsically unhappy with ourselves. And that it just becomes the kind of, exactly what you said, the shit show that we are in today. So self-love is where it's really, really at. And that's why it's something that I really wanted to tackle.
Yeah, I think you're right with regards to inner war. I think I am the biggest bully in my life, or the biggest tyrant. It's easy to rebel against the government or a corporation, but how do we rebel against ourselves? Because we constantly bully ourselves. Uh, I want to ask you, how do we love ourselves harder?
How do we love ourselves harder? I feel like the best way to do it, firstly, is just to become empty. And that is something that I learned fairly recently, maybe a couple of years ago, is that what is the conflict in me? What is creating the conflict? It is my understanding and perception of the world today. It's my understanding of everything around me. If I drop that understanding in a second and I just become empty, then I'm an empty vessel again. And then I can rebuild that understanding in my own way. So the only way I feel like you do that is that, so the way that I did it is that I researched so much, so much, so much, that eventually after all my research, I realized that I don't know anything. When you research it all and then you realize, oh, the culmination of my research, the conclusion is that I know absolutely squat. I know nothing. And it was also that I will probably never know anything, and I feel like it made me so small and inconsequential that I just felt like, what am I fighting against? What am I fighting for? Like, what is this war that's happening in me? When everything that has created my ego and everything that has created this outward personality and perspective doesn't even exist. It's all just a complete illusion. And when you realize that, you become empty and you're just like, honestly, all I have is me. This is all I have. It's my body, my mind, my soul. It's all I have. So there is no choice but to love. And I feel like once that happens and you realize that you are all you've got, the only thing that you can do is love yourself and radically love yourself, because that is what you have. Everything else is a lie.
Hmm. How did you become like this? Have you had a spiritual transformation? Did you try altering your thoughts or your mind in a positive way, either through meditation or psychedelics, or I don't know, reading a book or something?
Yeah, so I feel like the first time that I really experienced synchronicity in its true sense was when I dropped LSD. And I told you I used to be an atheist before that. And suddenly I looked around me, I was in nature, I looked around me and I was like, there's something very wrong with my belief system. Like, life is way more than I've ever understood before. Like, why am I feeling a connection to the leaf on a tree? Like, what is happening to me? And I wish I could draw this out, because the only way, I feel like words will do a disservice. I wish I could visually explain it, but it was like a lotus that was opening up, so many layers and so many petals, and layer after layer after layer was sort of like opening up, and this like world opened up to me that was beyond myself. And then over time, I also had an experience with ayahuasca, multiple experiences, and that brought a new message in my life. Like, so the interconnectedness of everything came from LSD, but so I have a tattoo that says "Love is the answer," because that is the message that came from doing ayahuasca. And I didn't even realize, at that time, I thought, yeah, like love is the answer. It is. It's just nice to be like loving and caring and empathetic and compassionate. And that those were the feelings that I had. But now when I think about what it was trying to teach me and what love is and how incredibly powerful this source of energy of love is, it really, really blows my mind. And it really makes me feel like that was one of the experiences that happened in my life, because I was meant to be here. I was meant to do this work. I was meant to Everything was meant to happen in exactly the way that it has. We were meant to have this conversation. It's just, life is a perfect synchronicity of events. And I truly believe that these experiences have definitely changed my life, which is why I think the fact that entheogenic plants are banned and there is a war on them is a very, very unfortunate thing for humanity. I truly always say that if everyone had an experience with ayahuasca in their lives, we would not be in the situation that we are today. We would not be afraid. We would not be polarized. We would not be divided. Our perspective on everything would be very, very different. And that's the reason that they make it so inaccessible, because they would not be able to control us.
And another way that they try to control us is by using our own fear of death. I agree that death is a scary thing, but we have I think we started fearing death so much, and governments and corporations are trying to use our fear of death against us. Stay indoors or you will die. Don't mingle with these kind of people or you will die. And I think psychedelics or meditation or Wim Hof breathing or whatever you can have access to kind of vanquishes our fear of death. It makes us look at life in a different way itself. What is life? Do you believe in an afterlife? What do you think of afterlife?
So this is my big question, and I know that obviously no one has the answer to this, because no one can tangibly say that this is what happens exactly, which is why I think all religion is such a farce. Like, how do you know? Have you done it? How do you know? Truly. Um, but the way that I think about it, and I do think about this a lot, because um, I'm a very emotional person, and it's my greatest strength, and it has also been my greatest weakness in through most of my life. And which is why I read a lot about Stoicism. And one of the like very important principles of Stoicism is memento mori, which is contemplate upon your own death. And I do it all the time. I think about it, and I think about, what is it to be alive, really? Like, what am I doing? Is it when my breath stops? Does it mean my life stops? Is that just what it is, that everything just gets over because it's the end of the number of breaths that I have? And the more I think about it, the more I ease into the understanding that it's not that. I feel like intrinsically something is telling me, like innately, intuitively, something is telling me that the life that we have is only to learn a set of lessons that we have come to this planet to learn. We are here for a very detailed reason. Each and every single one of us has a purpose. Our souls have a purpose. And then beyond that, our souls transcend and move into another plane, and maybe move into another body. And that's how we continue living our life on this planet in a cyclical manner forever, until we then attain nirvana or attain complete emancipation from the cycle. So this is what I believe, and I know that this is the belief of Hinduism, but I don't. It's not because I'm Hindu that I believe this. It is truly because of my understanding of karma. I believe that more than anything else, if there's one concept in the world that I adhere to, it is the concept of karma. Because, like I said, ever since I was little, I used to always wonder, why is it that I have this life and this child on the street has that life? And the only answer to that ever that anyone has ever been able to give is that there is a universal law at play. And the universal law decides what you have, what lessons you have to learn, and what lesson this other soul has to learn in order to then transcend to the next level. And I just believe that it is the most beautiful way of explaining life. And it is the most real and tangible explanation that I have ever encountered.
Hmm. So I think your idea of afterlife sort of is in line with the Hindu teachings of reincarnation, that we keep getting reincarnated. I had this funny conversation with the nihilist. Okay, here random. I had a guy called Nihil Anand on my podcast. He's a nihilist. He sued his own parents for giving birth to him because he
Oh
wishes
my
that he was. He wishes that he was never born. He hates existence, and a guy from my hometown liked that episode so much that he texted me and he said, "Hey man, I really liked your episode with Neil Anand so much. Can we meet?" Because he doesn't have anyone to talk. I don't think he has that many friends, and he's a very interesting guy. And the first time I met him, I asked him, "Hey, how are you?" And his answer was, "I'm not fine. I'm a nihilist." And we started talking about life, and I asked him, like, what do you want in life? He said, "I just want to die. I don't want to live." And I asked him, like, "Have you thought of, I don't know, killing yourself?" He's like, "No, I don't want to commit suicide, but I wish, without my intention, without my action, I wish my life dies." And I asked him one question that really put fear into his mind. Okay, what if you die, and what if you're born again? What if your existence doesn't end there? Do you believe in reincarnation? And he's like, "Please don't talk to me about reincarnation. I don't want to live again." And then I told him, "Look, okay, you might have seen one episode of my podcast, but I've also had another guy. His name is John Chavez. And in that episode, we talk about reincarnation and biology. There's this scientist from University of Virginia, and he actually tries whatever you just said about life after death. He tries to
God.
figure out if that can be proved scientifically. So he's a child psychiatrist, and he talks to many kids between the ages of 3 to 6, and
Mm.
many of these kids, they say that I still have memories of my previous life. uh, I
Yeah, I've
was
read about that.
I was Joe from Wisconsin. So they go to Wisconsin and they actually found a Joe who died at the same time this kid died. So,
Yeah.
and when I said this to the nihilist, he was so angry, he was so pissed because he just wants his existence to finish. He's like, "I just want nirvana, I just want moksha." But I'm like, "Sorry, man, I'm just, don't shoot the messenger." Um, Regardless of whether there is reincarnation or not, what is the purpose of life?
I feel like the purpose of everyone's life is different. I truly believe this. I truly believe that the only thing that I can answer is the purpose of my life, because I am in this body and I have been given this opportunity. And I don't think that anyone else's purpose is my purpose, which is why each of us being here, and which is why this nihilist shouldn't kill himself, because the purpose of his life is important. There is a reason that he is here. He's meant to touch someone's life, do something for someone, maybe create an awakening for someone, maybe just bring someone an ice cream as a show of love, and then that person starts believing in love, like it can be anything. But I truly believe that the purpose of my life specifically is to just be of service to humanity in any way that I can. And it is what makes me the happiest. And I believe that everyone can figure out what their purpose is. And if you can't figure out, and this is a very bright friend of mine said this on actually a conversation live that I was having with him, that if you can't figure out your purpose, because not everyone can, create it. He was like, create your purpose. And I thought that was so beautiful, because growing up, I never knew what my purpose was. And I feel like for me, it very naturally happened that I realized it over time. But if you can't find purpose, create it, because there is a purpose to every single life on this planet. And the purpose is, more often than not, is to be whatever you have to be, and to go through the motions of whatever you have to go through. Because in the grand scheme of things, that those motions that you're going through is creating energy that's being transmuted by everything and into everything in the entire world, in the entire universe. So every single person's purpose is their own, but it's absolutely necessary. And your purpose is just to be you, to do your thing, and to live your life, so that you are part of this collective humanity, collective evolution. Even if you have to be the guy who says, I wish humanity never evolves, then that is your purpose. Your purpose is to be that guy, to wish that upon humanity. But the fact of what I believe is that every single life has a purpose, which is why I'm so against suicide. I think that it's just an absolute no-no in my books. By all means, if there was one thing that I could completely stop in the entire world, it would be suicide, because I truly believe that every single human being has a purpose on this planet, and every purpose is absolutely divine. All of the lives that we touch, all of the things that we do, all of the things that we see and experience create vibration that, obviously affects humanity by and large. So yeah, that is what I believe purpose is.
Wonderful. This was a very interesting conversation. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Pratham. This was actually really fun for me as well. It was really fun hanging out with you. And we definitely will meet at a concentration camp.
All right. I'll see you there. I'll see you at the concentration camp. Bye.
Bye.